Okay, and we are going live. Hey everybody, thanks for joining. I'll be hosting a live for the next hour with Shay from Freedom, and just waiting for her to join in here. Thanks everybody for hopping on. It's a very important topic that I think needs more awareness. People need to understand the scale of the impact of human trafficking and child exploitation. I am just waiting for Shay to... There we go. Okay, great. Perfect. Here we go.
Hello.
Hey, hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How's your day going?
Busy. Very busy, but good.
You are a busy one. Yeah, well, thank you for making time for this. I know you had a very limited window to make it happen, so thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. So we have actually never met in person.
We have not.
And we have not, which is crazy because we have so many mutual friends in common, yet we've never connected. And here we are now. So glad to finally virtually meet you. And thank you so much for joining this Instagram live and for sharing all that you do and everything about Free Them. I would love to start this off with you sharing a little bit about who you are and what Free Them is all about, and then we'll dive into some very important information that needs to be shared.
So thanks for having me. And like Zark said, it's crazy that we've actually never formally met before. We've got a lot of mutual friends in common, and so I know they're on here right now. Laura, I saw you come on, the famous Lara Maro, who has talked so highly about Zark all these years. So
amazing. Thank you.
And in the past life, I've heard different things about different industries you've worked in. So this is so cool to be here together today, talking about, I call this Impact Hour whenever we dive into topics like this.
Love it.
And I think it's really important, especially like your sphere of influence. And I just commend you as well for taking a stance. And I'm going to highlight the fact that because you're a man, it does make a difference. And all of you guys that are tuning in right now, like, it is a big thing when a man gets behind this topic. And Zark, I know my whole team at Freedom, we're grateful for you.
Thank you.
I just want to keep encouraging you to keep going. Like, every time I see your videos, I'm like, yes. So without further ado, I know you started the question, this is your live, but I just wanted to thank you. Because like I said, we need more men. We need more men to stand up and speak out on this issue against trafficking.
Agreed.
You can see so many people are doing thumbs up right now. So feel encouraged as you continue to speak. So
thank you.
As Zark said, I'm the founder and the executive director of Free Them. We're a nonprofit organization that we just turned 10 in this past January. So we're 10 years strong in Canada. And it started out as an initiative. I never thought that this would turn into a national organization that fights human trafficking, but that's how the snowball effect happens, right? Little by little and one day at a time. So I don't know, do you want me to tell a bit about my journey now as to kind of how Free Them started? Do you want to save that for later?
How about we start, we dive into that a little bit later on. I think, a great way to kick this off is just to share some of the hard facts and statistics about human trafficking in Canada, because I'll admit that I've learned a significant amount of just how massive this problem is, not just in the world, but in Canada specifically. Like, I think everybody knows that human trafficking happens and there is child exploitation happening. However, I was stunned to find out how prevalent it is in Canada and even here in Ontario. And I know you have had direct involvement with some of these busts that have happened, some of the preventative measures. So I'd love for you to share some information on the hard facts about human exploitation, human trafficking in Canada, and maybe about how you got into all this.
Sure. So why don't we'll take it at a macro level and bring it
Okay.
in micro to Canada. So today in the world, there's over 40 million people in global slavery. And if you don't have $40 million sitting in your bank account, if you don't have 40 million friends or followers on Instagram, that number doesn't mean anything to people like myself, to people like you. And so I encourage people for a moment to put it into perspective. So the Canadian population, the current population is about 37 million in Canada. And if you're in America tuning in, take the state of California, okay? Imagine for a moment that the entire nation of Canada, from the east to the west, north and south, including all of the territories, if you're in the US, every single person in the state of California is in some form of slavery today, right now, as you and I talk. And for us, being Canadian, like, to imagine our entire nation of Canada in slavery is crazy. There's different forms of trafficking. The two most prevalent in Canada and the United States are forced labor and sexual exploitation. But there are other things like debt bondage and chattel labor and organ trafficking, which, you know, if we want to go there later, we can dive into that. But for what's going on in Canada and the US, the two most prevalent forms are forced labor and sexual exploitation. And when you look at who's being trafficked, over 80% are women and children. And over 70% of those are trafficked for the purposes of sexual exploitation. And you take any other form of slavery, of exploitation, to be trafficked, whether, you know, it's forced labor, chattel labor, even if the intent is around forced labor, if you're a female, if you're a girl, if it's a young woman, more times than not, that sexual exploitation crosses over as well. It's a $150 billion industry. Again, if you don't have that sitting in your bank account, that number doesn't mean anything to people like you and me. So what does that mean? It means right now, guys, that this illegal enterprise is greater than the profits of Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple combined.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and when we think of, especially in today's day and age, not that I'm going to deviate into censorship, but when you think of what's going on with Bill Gates, Microsoft, censorship, Facebook, and you look at these powerhouse corporations, right? This that we're talking about right now is greater than that. This makes more money than those three corporations combined. And you can kind of throw in whatever else you want. You could throw in Nike, you could throw in Starbucks, you can interchange them. But Apple, Microsoft, Amazon combined, this is greater than that. It is the fastest growing crime on our planet today. And the reason that that is that the body, unlike drugs and arms, is more lucrative because it can be reused over and over and over again. If I'm a drug dealer or if I'm selling arms, and, you know, not to put Zark and I in this camp, but for a moment, you know, if I'm selling drugs to Zark, to make more money, what has to happen? Zark needs to come back to me to get more drugs. Whereas if I can rent out something, I can still keep that product and reuse it over and over again. And this is the evil that happens with the body, that it's seen as a commodity, and the body is being rented out anywhere between 15 to 20 times a day, and that's on average. And so when you look at that, it becomes very lucrative. It's also easier to traffic and to control people, human beings, than smuggle in and traffic narcotics and arms, just because those are illegal, and visually you know that something's wrong. A person, you can control them, you can manipulate them, and it's easier. Then we look at the average age of entry. The average age of entry into forced prostitution in Canada and the United States is 13 years old. And this is where, you know, I say to people, how do you come up with an average? You have to take all the numbers that you got, divide them by what you have, and that's what you get. And so to have that number be 13 in both our countries means that you have to have so many that are 8, 9, 10, 11 years old to bring that number down to be 13. And this is where I challenge so many people that want to fight back in the movement of saying, well, what about prostitution and choice? And what we really need to look at is how we're applying choice to that situation, how we use that word. But further, that statistic is so, so important, because you might see a girl that looks 18, 19, 20. I am not concerned about what age she is currently, as opposed to which age she entered into the sex trade. What age was she forced and lured and coerced into having to sell her body or being sold for sex, and which is really being paid to rape, right? More stats I can give you. There's a misconception, right, that in Canada and in the US that human trafficking is happening, or the victims, my apologies, are coming from outside of Canada or outside of the United States. And although that is true, that does happen, over 87% of victims in Canada are Canadian. This is a problem that's happening right here at home. Over 300,000 girls predominantly are domestically trafficked within the United States every single year. Again, those are our girls, you know, American girls, not coming from Southeast Asia, not coming from Eastern Europe, not coming from continent of Africa, American and Canadians. And so this is a huge issue. And again, Zark, I'm so grateful for you, because we need to wake up. Canada needs to wake up. You know, we're in two of the most free countries in the world, and yet we have such slavery that's happening right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, and you know why it was very important for me to host this with you is because most Canadians would not think that this was actually a problem that's here in our own backyard. Like, we might hear about it in Thailand, or we might hear about it in some third world country, but the fact is it's actually happening right here. And that's why it was so important for you to share those numbers and statistics, because you know, it happens in plain sight, and most people don't even know what to look for. Yeah. So I would love for you to share a bit about, like, how do we look for it? How do we create awareness about it, or, you know, preventative measures? What can we pass on to our children or young women or people who we know who may be in a compromised situation like this?
Yeah, so maybe before I directly answer that, I'm going to set it up a little bit, because to put some things into perspective, as I shared with you, we turned 10 years old this year. And when Freedom was first starting in 2010, the statistic was that there was 27 million people in slavery today. And now that number is 40. It used to be a $32 billion industry. Now it's 150. And so when you look at, going into your question, when you look at what needs to be done, we've been on this upward hill battle for 10 years to implement legislation, to train the media and politicians on what words to use, what words to not use. You know, guys, if you're interested in that, you can go to our Freedom Instagram or my personal one, and you can see, call it what it really is, and using words like child and pornography that should never go together. Call it what it is. They're child rape images, child rape videos. That's not pornography, right? That child and porn should never go together. And so it's been this journey over the past 10 years to educate governments, even on the differences between human trafficking, human smuggling, getting it into the public awareness, and parents on what to do, how to identify. And I share those stats because this is such an important question that you asked. I wish today that, as I was talking to you, that I could tell you that 10 years ago, the statistic was 27 million, and now we only have 10 million people that are in slavery in the world. I wish I could tell you that it used to be a $32 billion industry, and now it's only 5, or even lower, like just even 27, showing us that we are progressing through countries, through government, at a UN level, and it's not happening. And I think right now this is, and I just gave myself goosebumps, which is bizarre because I usually don't do that. But, you know, I think like we are in such a unique time in the world right now where we are waking up, people are waking up to all different things. And the most important question is why? Why isn't the media covering this issue more? Why aren't we seeing politicians being prosecuted less and less for things like child rape images, child rape videos, raping a minor, you know, soliciting a minor. Why aren't we seeing less of that in the government level? And why are our elects still really kind of getting away with it? They get slaps on the wrist. Why is it not in our curriculum? This is something, you know, Zark and I talked about offline, that we still lack in Canada and even in the United States, truly the issue of human trafficking being taught at the school level at all grades. Needs to be child appropriate, but so that when a child starts to get groomed or contacted online, parents, if your kid has a smartphone, your child is susceptible. So these conversations that make us uncomfortable, that are too ugly, that we can't sleep at night, that we don't want to, whatever reason and an excuse, I'm going to call it an excuse, to have these difficult conversations. I always say, if it's not you having this conversation with your kids, somebody else is. And it's not in a protective manner. So what needs to be done is the pressure being put on the mainstream media, the pressure being put on our politicians. They want your vote, and they listen to people when enough people make enough noise. They are forced to listen. They're forced to bring out their dirty laundry. And I'm not saying all politicians are, absolutely not. You know, Freedom has had the honor of working with some very, very wonderful people in our Canadian government at all levels who genuinely want to fight human trafficking. But there's still too many. There's still too much corruption happening all over. Talk about even law enforcement. You know, we've worked with officers that have rescued a victim one day, and, you know, months, years later, we have found out that they've re-victimized that victim. You know, there's evil and there's corruption in all areas, right? Like, that's what happens when you have human beings trying to run the show, right? Like, we screw it up. And so some of them are worse. And so what needs to happen is this continuation of awareness being done, conversations like this. Education is the most powerful weapon. And then taking it to the next level, once you're a bit more educated, to call your MP, your MPPs, your city councilors. If you're in the United States, call your senators, call your congressmen, call your congresswomen, and say, what is your office doing to fight human trafficking, and why aren't you doing more? Such an important question. Why aren't you doing more? There's always more that can be done.
Yeah, and you know, very, very important for people to take those few minutes and reach out to your MP or your local politician office and ask these questions. And if this is something that's concerning you, your life, this should be something that is very important to you. And, you know, I don't want to put blame or shame anyone for not taking action on this. However, it's like the only way we're going to be able to reduce those numbers and bring down the impact of what's happening is when we decide to take a stand and actually take action. Put in the time, make the phone call, write to the MPs. Like, you know, we'll sit on hold with Amazon wondering when our next shipment is coming in, you know, waiting patiently to find out when it's going to be delivered. And, you know, it's a few minutes of our life that we could use to put towards, you know, communicating our thoughts, our feelings on the situation. You know, and what you mentioned earlier is like, you know, if you have a child and they are on their smart device, their iPhone, their iPad, if they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, this is where these predators are literally hunting down young people. Yeah. This is where they're targeting them. So if your child is on social media or spending their time on devices, you need to have that conversation. Yeah. And I know it's not an easy conversation. I mean, this in general, human trafficking and child exploitation is a tough conversation to listen to. It is something that most people do not want to face because it is dark, it is ugly, it is tragic, and the only way we're going to put a stop to this and bring those numbers down is when we're willing to look at it and willing to do something about it and take a stand. And the easiest thing you can do is contact your local politician, contact the government, and start putting the heat on them. Because as you said, it's like they want those votes, they want the support. And when they realize that enough of us are taking a stand and we're doing something about it, that's when it will motivate them. This is when it'll move the needle to get some legislation changed.
Yeah. And I'll share a couple of facts that maybe you don't even know, Zark, but most people don't know. Really easy. You can just Google like, who's my MP in Canada, and it'll take you to the site. You put in your postal code and it'll tell you who your representative is in your riding. So it really takes 10 seconds to find who you're supposed to call. And then by law, this is so key, by law, if you call, if you email, if you send in a letter, your MP, MPP, city councilor, by law, has to respond to you. By law.
Wow. Yeah.
And most of us don't realize that. So, you know, and this is pre like my days of getting into freedom, and I had to learn politics from the bottom up. Like for me, I was like, politics was so boring. Like I had no interest in it. And now the more you dive into any issue that you care about, you'll understand that politics go hand in hand, because they're the ones that are creating the infrastructure in your country that are either going to support your cause or they're going to be against it. And so by law, guys, if you make that call, if you send in a letter, if you send in an email, and to Zark's point, I'll put me on the stool. I spent like 5 hours waiting online for Expedia and Air Canada to get my credit for when COVID first happened. I'm sure so many of us did that, where we'll just wait on 5 hours, 4 hours, they hang up on you, you call back, you do it again, you get even more upset. That's what I went through. And I had 3 flights I had to cancel. So it was like nuts, right? And to your point, we will do that, but so many of us will think, oh, I'll do that call later, I'll do that email later. And really now is the time. If we all just made that call, it really, really does make a difference. Zark, you said one thing that, if I could maybe just elaborate on something, because I know you have some more questions that you want to ask me. When we're talking about smartphones, it grieves me that I'm going to say what I'm going to say, but if any of you guys follow me today, I shared some, probably some pretty eye-opening stuff. That's not new. This is not new, but we've seen over the past week, prime examples with Facebook, where using the hashtag Save the Children, most people got blocked, their posts removed, they were banned, suspended for 48 hours. And there was enough noise and complaints from society globally that Facebook reinstated that. But the hashtag Save Our Children, Save the Children was a violation against Facebook's community standards. Yet if you look at my my Instagram stories today, and I have it saved in a highlight too, so you can go check it out after. You will see that Facebook multiple times has no issues with pedophilia. They feel that reports that have been reported, even on Instagram, that they don't actually violate the community standards, even though it is very, very clear that these accounts are grooming children, and it's explicit comments on there and photos and images that's pedophiles, and yet it's somehow not against Instagram community standards. And Facebook putting out a survey to see how people feel about pedophiles, and should an adult be allowed to solicit an underage girl, specifically a 14-year-old, for nude photos. Here's my point. Number one, you should never need a survey about that. This is a non-conversation. It is full stop. Child pedophilia is extremely wrong. It is evil. We shouldn't need a survey on that. Number one, Facebook, like shame on you. Number two, you have 2 major platforms that when things are reported, and this is another true story today as well. I had one girl, because I posted this on my stories, to go report these accounts. She reported 4 of them, and Instagram froze her account.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it. I'm gonna share that later. But I say all of this to say to Zark, when we're talking about social media platforms, they are there to protect your children. They're not for your children. It is so clear. In minutes, Google could disassemble the dark web and child pornography, you know, child rape images and videos. They could do it. They've been showing us that they're doing it in all things related to injections, which I won't say the word so that we don't get this video removed. Okay, guys, but you guys can read through the lines. You know, I should do sign language here. I actually do know sign language. But the point is that they're not for your children. They can censor anything they want, yet they have chosen to not take a stance on this. And yet they're doing the contrary, blocking people that are using the hashtag Save the Children, Save Our Children. They are not taking down accounts that are visibly so evident around pedophiles and grooming your children. And so this is why it is so, so important that you are having these conversations about TikTok, Snapchat, you know, Instagram, Facebook. There's all these other ones too that I'm just not cool enough anymore that I don't know about. Zark, I don't know. Do you know some of the other new ones? There's all these ones out there now.
I have trouble keeping up with Instagram and Facebook. That's where I tap out. That's it for me. Yeah.
But you know, the point is, you have to be talking to your kids. If your kid has a tablet in their hands, the conversation is never too young to be had. There's a child appropriate way to talk to your children, no different than how you would talk to any child, an 8th grader, an 18-year-old versus a 35-year-old and plus. You talk to them all differently about the same subject. This is the same thing. It needs to happen here in a child appropriate way.
Absolutely. So, you know, that's a great segue into, you know, what I'd like to ask is, so for someone who has young children who is on social media, or, you know, they get approached by someone, what are some of the preventative measures that we can teach our young children or teenagers who may get approached by someone who is told that, let's keep this a secret, daddy doesn't need to know, or, you know, any of that language that can start to groom a child or a teenager and lure them into something like child sexual exploitation or human trafficking? What is something, what are some of the tips that you could provide for parents or anybody out there who's concerned?
Yeah, you know, I think some of it is really going back to basics. And if you grew up in a good family, in a good household, your parents would have said to you, identifying where our private parts are on our body, and that nobody is ever to touch them, that it's an area that you respect. It's not funny. It's never a joke. And going back over the body, you know, with your child, to say that if anybody ever, you know, says that it's okay, it's a secret. It's like, again, if you're in a good family, secrets don't need to happen in a good household. There's no reason that your child should ever feel that they can't tell you something. And you need to create that space within your household where it is okay. As much as they might be worried, maybe even scared to tell you, you need to create that space by telling your child, there is nothing you can tell me that is going to get you in trouble. Again, like, this is never the child's fault, because if you put in these warnings, right, you tell a child this should never happen, and then maybe it does. Maybe they're going to be afraid that they're going to get in trouble thinking it's their fault. So, you know, reiterating to your child that this is never your fault. If something like this were to happen, you always need to come to mommy and daddy. And depending on how old they are, if you don't know who they are online, like, you need to show mom and dad who you're talking to. If you receive images, you know, this is not okay, and why. It's not enough to say, kind of like the cookie jar analogy of like, don't eat, you know, cookies before dinner, or don't put your hand on the hot stove. What do kids do? They put their hand on the hot stove. Why? Because you didn't explain to them that they will get burnt. You just told them not to do it. If you don't give an explanation to a child, no matter how young they are, I don't care how young they are, they want to do the opposite, right? So you need to explain, why can't a child receive a photo, or if photos are being asked from them, what do they do in that situation? And these are real. I can tell you real mom and dad stories where they have had these conversations with their children, and them coming to them, and thankfully nothing happened past that, because the children were empowered as to what to look for, and creating this space in their home where it was okay to come to mom and dad, even if they felt embarrassed. I know of one girl that she felt so embarrassed she didn't want to come to her mom, and she didn't want anybody knowing, because she felt like it was her fault. but it didn't go past that. So setting the spyware on your kids' phones as well, right? Doing regular check-ins of who they're talking to, what accounts they're following, who's following them. That's really important to be going through. Some of these pedophile accounts, it's not even just enough to block them or to report them. I go into all of their followers and who's following them. I'm like, I want to know you're creating, this account, you're pushing content out, you're following people, but people are following you. Who are all of those people? Those people need to be reported. And so on your own kids account, you need to regularly be going in and saying, do you know Sally? Do you know Joe? Who's Tina? Like, who's Michael? Who do you know them? And if you don't know them as a parent, you got to have those conversations, with your children.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, in regards to parents who want to learn more about preventative measures, want to learn more about what to look out for to protect their children, are there any websites? Are there any, obviously your organization, Free Them. I know there's also Our Rescue. There's a number of different sites and organizations out there. Are there some that you could recommend, or any websites that you suggest that parents can go to learn more about what to look out for and how to prevent these things from happening to their children?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you did mention just now Our Rescue. It stands for the Underground Railroad. On Instagram, that's their handle. In my opinion, they're probably one of the most reputable organization that fights this issue in the world. So definitely their site. Love 146 is another great organization out of the US. Deliver Fund, some of you guys might have seen me do a live with them a couple weeks back. Fantastic. There's Not For Sale. There's IJM, which is International Justice Mission globally. We also have one in Canada. And they focus on everything basically outside of Canada and the United States. So you get very different perspectives and understanding human trafficking outside of our borders. Free Them, of course, if you're not following us, we'd love for you to connect with us. One of the safe houses here that we support is Aurora House. They're phenomenal. Covenant House Toronto as well. They've got a safe house that we helped to open up through one of our walks that we did 2 years ago. All of the funds went to open up that safe house, which is the first one in Toronto, actually. That's an emergency state safe house for victims of trafficking ages 14 to, I think it's 22. And that's a 6-bed program there. So those are some, and, maybe after, as you guys are watching this, because you're like, we need all of these handles, offer them to Zark. Zark, you can post it in the Instagram.
Yep.
People have it in the
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then someone just shared as well, Project Rise is another great source.
Now is great.
Yeah.
And some of you, if you were at our Freedom Walk last year, you would have seen she was our keynote speaker.
Amazing.
She's got a powerful story, and she's in Toronto. So, it's, again, those type of things, they sometimes hit more closer to home. But yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, great. And while we're speaking about the march, so there is a march happening this Saturday, August 22nd at 10 a.m. Freedom for the Children has organized this one. Monica Gomez from the Concierge Club, as well as myself, have jumped on board to help her promote it and use our networks and our influence to raise awareness for the march. And again, I realize that this is a tough topic to take on. This is a hard subject to speak to your kids about, to speak to even friends about. People I know who are supporting this and spreading the word. They're like, my friends who have kids don't want to hear about it. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to pretend like it's not going on. And if you feel strongly about this and you want to take a stand, you want to meet other people who share your passion for putting an end to these horrific crimes, please come join us Saturday, 10 a.m. at Nathan Phillips Square. There'll be, I'm going to say, thousands of people there, all joining forces, taking a stand and raising awareness for what is going on. And at the march, we'll be providing information as well that Shay has given us on, 5 things you could do to raise awareness and prevent human trafficking from happening. So I invite you, if you want to connect with like-hearted people who share your passion for putting an end to human trafficking and child exploitation, please join us this Saturday, Nathan Phillips Square at 10 a.m. And, just show up and support, because there's power in numbers, and it's a way for us to connect, meet one another, and raise awareness for this cause, because it's time. Like you said, it's time to put this shit to an end. Like, if YouTube, Google, if the corporations aren't taking a stand and doing something about this, we have to take control of that in our own hands, and get loud, and let our politicians know that we're not just gonna sit by and let this happen and pretend like it's not going on, because it is going on everywhere in Canada, in our own backyard. And for any of the parents who may be watching this, who, have questions or maybe feel a bit uneasy about this, if it was your child, if it was somebody you knew and loved, and this happened to them, would you not want the support of thousands of people rallying to come together to raise awareness, to save your loved one? I'm not a father, I don't have children, but I have a beautiful niece and nephew, and just the thought of something like this happening to them rocks me to the core. And it's what has me doing this. It's what has me, rallying and getting people together to raise awareness, because it could be a member of my family. It could be a member of someone, of your family, or someone that you love, so just imagine what that might feel like, and know that we can make a difference.
And the reality is, and you hit it on the head, it's a line I say all of the time. The fact is, it is somebody's daughter. It is somebody's son. Mm-hmm. And I too don't have children of my own, but I've got many nieces and nephews, and my brother just had a beautiful niece of mine who just turned over 4 months old. Mm-hmm. And I've got 3 godchildren as well. And my eldest niece is 12, and, all in between. And you don't even need to have nieces and nephews. You don't even need to have, your own children, but think of yourself. You are somebody's son. You are somebody's daughter. Mm-hmm. And if it was happening to you, you would be praying that somebody would be coming for your rescue. You'd be praying that somebody would see you as a victim, that would hear your silent cries. I don't ever use the term being a voice for the voiceless. I believe we all have a voice. I believe all victims have a voice, that they're being silenced. And it's our job, it's your job as a collective to amplify those voices. It's part of why I do what I do. And, Zark, I shared this with you before, and for everybody listening, 10 years I've been speaking in high schools and universities and faith groups and so forth. And every single time I speak in a school, the youngest I've ever spoken to are grade 5s. The oldest is about second year university. And I've spoken to all-girl private schools. I've been to Upper Canada College. I've been to All Crescent Boys School. Every single time I talk about human trafficking, I have at least one student that comes up to me afterwards and says, I didn't know what this was called, but what you described, I think this is happening to a friend of mine right now. In boys' schools, that's a private school. In a very affluent school, to schools all over the GTA that I've spoken to of different demographics. And the point is, it is happening to somebody, could be a few arms away, but more and more as we get educated, I truly know that this is happening to somebody that most likely we know without realizing it. They've been calling it something different. Mm-hmm. If you speak to survivors of human trafficking, including Renelle, Tamaya Nagy's another one that Freedom has worked with for 10 years. They don't know the term human trafficking. They don't walk around thinking like, I'm a human trafficking victim. And there's many reasons for that, but simply they're not identifying themselves as a human trafficking victim in this situation. Mm-hmm. So a girl that this is happening to, a young person who's 10, 11, 14, 16, maybe even 21, is not identifying that way. And so the point is that there are probably these girls that we all might know, somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who's being trafficked right now without mm-hmm. realizing it, because they don't know the definition of human trafficking to be able to put that to the situation. And when we start to think more like that, it's what makes you wake up in the morning and want to go down to Nathan Phillips Square and get really, really freaking loud. It's what makes you want to post on Instagram and do these lives and do what you can and do your part, because when we all just do something, that's when we change the world. When we all just commit to doing our part a little bit. You don't all need to go start a nonprofit organization or be like Monica and Zark and you know, put together a march or a walk, but you can show up. You can do a post, you can call your MP, and when we all do something, something big might just happen. And that's when we change the world. That's when we see Canada policy being changed. That's when we see politicians listening to us, the media coming out. And that's when we start winning this horrendous battle on human trafficking. So Saturday, you guys need to wake up and go down there. We've got, Zark said, there's some Free Them 101 cards that'll educate you on trafficking. Ask them for 2 or 3 so you can hand them out to other friends later that aren't at that march. Go pass them out. Take some of our Free Them bracelets. They're a conversation piece. Wear it. Tell people about it. If you're one of the lucky ones to get the shirts, we're gifting them for free. So, you know, go see Zark. Go get your t-shirt. I think you even have some youth-sized ones. And bring your kids. Explain to them what you're doing there that day. It's so powerful to see the little people at our walks in the past. And, you know, if you want to make signs, saying children aren't for sale, and those little guys carrying those signs is so powerful. And explaining to that child why they're carrying that sign, it's even more powerful. So I'm so grateful that you guys are putting this on. And I said too, you know, we're gonna have to sit down, the 3 of us, afterwards.
Absolutely.
To shake up some more stuff together, and really continue to make a big impact in our country.
Yeah, thank you for, yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to that. And, you know, I'm going to share this to all the fellow men out there who are watching this. You know, it takes a lot to face this, and it takes a lot to take a stand for something this dark and this, you know, sensitive. I can't remember exactly what the statistic was, but I think it was like something like 1 out of 3 children have been touched in an inappropriate way. You know, sexual abuse has been, you know, is a very real problem that impacts many, many lives. And in my business with my private coaching, I have a few clients who at a very young age, they had something happen to them. And I see the aftermath of a 40-year-old man or woman who was touched in an inappropriate way at a young age and the impact it's had on their lives.
Sure.
And some people don't want to look at this because they have something buried. They have something that happened to them a long time ago, and they want to forget about it, and they just want to pretend like it didn't happen. And I can understand that. It's a heavy, heavy thing to deal with. And if you don't want to see this happen to another human, if you want to make sure that you are doing what you can to take a stand and let the world know that this isn't okay, this is your opportunity. I understand that, you know, it's uncomfortable, and that's where the biggest growth happens. That's where the biggest change happens, when we're willing to look into the shadows, willing to look into that darkness that we're just not okay with, that we won't stand for, and say, I'm ready to take this on, and I'm ready to stand for it, and ready to make a difference. You know, so for any of you who are hesitating to come, to support, to, you know, share your passion for this initiative because something has happened in the past that maybe you don't want to reconnect with, I urge you, have the strength, take it on. You will feel, you will feel very empowered. You will feel deeply rewarded and fulfilled that you were able to do something about it. So please, I invite you, if you're thinking about it, come join me. Let's make a difference. Let's get loud, and let's make sure that we let people know that this isn't happening anymore. We aren't just going to stand back and let this go on right in front of our faces and pretend like it's not happening.
And you know, the other really important part to that too is you're not alone.
No.
You know, there are so many survivors of sexual abuse and survivors of human trafficking that in our past walks, we've done 7 of them. We would have been doing our 8th this September, but with COVID, you know, unfortunately we weren't able to put it on. But every single year we get emails from moms whose daughters are still missing, to survivors of human trafficking that came out and feeling, as Zark said, empowered, but not alone. That there are other people that have been through what they have been through that can understand what they have gone through without actually communicating, but the support that they feel of seeing all these people surrounding them and saying, we're here, we're fighting for you. We are here for you. We're fighting for you. And that's probably one of the biggest things I want to encourage you, that if you are a survivor of any form of abuse, there are so many people that you're just not alone. And showing up to a day like Saturday really makes you feel that way. You'll meet people. They don't need to know your story. You know, you might think that you've got it written on your forehead, but you don't. And what you want to share, you can share, but you're going to meet other like-minded people that are there to support you, to support the movement, and that you're not alone in this fight.
Absolutely. I think it's so important to mention, and a great reason to be a part of this. Connect with like-minded people who share your passion for something that's very, very important. Shay, I know you mentioned that you have some other marches coming up. Like, for those who maybe can't make it this Saturday, what else do you have coming up? How else can people support and get involved?
Zark just put me on the hot seat, guys. Like I said, we would have had one coming up in September. Ours is a little different. We always do it at a hotel, and we have a ceremony that morning that you hear from law enforcement, you hear from survivors, I speak. We also will bring in a politician. Sometimes it's a minister of immigration. So there's a two-part component. You have breakfast. We have a kids zone. We have different vendors. So like we've had International Justice Mission in the past, Tamea's Cause, 10 Fed, which is the clothing brand that feeds 10 children every time you purchase their stuff. So we have this little kind of like a market at the beginning, and that's about an hour and a half, and then we go out and we do a 3-kilometer walk. And because of that component, that event brings out about 500 to 700 people each year, and unfortunately we're not able to do that this September. So Zark's put me on the hot seat by saying, when's our next march going to be, or when's our next walk going to be? And that's why I did say, guys, that after Saturday, Zark, Monica, and I are going to sit down so that we can collaborate and come up with something. So
amazing.
Stay tuned. Zark and I will be back.
Okay.
Let you know. Okay. Zark,
okay. Awesome.
As to what we're doing, but I will say this: we are going to be. In September, our focus right now is to do another online campaign. We did a smaller one for World Trafficking Day on July 30th, which actually wasn't that small. It went viral amazingly. But we want to do a certain challenge that we're going to really want to push to see this go globally viral. So stay tuned in September, maybe October, depending. Freedom is 100% volunteer organization. So my whole team, we all have our own careers and full-time jobs. And so sometimes the rollout could take a little bit longer for something this big. But now is the time. We want to be online, knowing that everyone's paying attention. So stay tuned for that. Stay connected with us on our newsletter. We only send stuff out once a month. And of course on our social platforms, because that's where you're going to get the instant, like, here's what's going on with Freedom. Here's how you can be involved. This is the event we have going up, a walk, whatever Monica, Zark, and I decide to do. Petitions that need to be signed, all those type of things. Staying connected with us is the best way.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And we're going to have petitions at the march on Saturday that we are going to submit to our politician's office to mandate education on human trafficking prevention into the educational curriculum, because young children need to be aware of this issue, what to look for, and how to protect themselves. And I just want to say thank you for what you do. I know it's all volunteer. I know you got a busy career and a lot of stuff going on. So thank you for putting your time and energy into this. And To all of my influencer friends out there who have thousands to millions of followers,
Yes.
and I'm not going to call anybody out directly. I might tag you in the video later, but some of you watching this, some of you who are in my network literally have millions of followers. And I'm not going to tell you you should do it. However, it's really important. Think of the little ones. Think about your loved ones. Think about the fact that this can happen to anyone you know. And it is this is a real pandemic. This is something that's been going on for a very long time, and it's not going to stop. There's no medication, there's no cure, there's no needle that you can take to stop the human exploitation and child trafficking. It's up to us to take a stand and make noise. So I'm sharing videos, I'm sharing content. So is Shay. Free them. There's Our Rescue. We are all sharing content that is very valuable and very necessary for people to watch and educate themselves on. So please reshare the promo, get the word out, let people know the magnitude of this problem, because yes, the world is dealing with a bunch of crazy things right now, and human trafficking and child exploitation should be at the top of that list.
Absolutely.
Without any of the politics, without any of the theories or agendas involved, it is a real problem that's been happening for far too long. So please, if this is something you're passionate about, share the message, share the content. I'll have the promo for the march on Saturday on my Instagram stories. Please share it. Would love to see you all out there. Let's get 1,000 people out for the march. Let's make a difference. Let's get loud. And Shay, I just want to say thank you so much for joining. I look forward to meeting you in person in a week, so we can collaborate with Monica. And look, if any of you watching this want to get involved and you want to support and be a part of raising awareness for this initiative, I welcome you. Please send me a DM. Let's get together and collaborate and brainstorm on how we can make more of an impact around this very, very important initiative.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Shay, for your time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I really look forward to meeting you soon, and thank you for all that you do. I'm going to be sharing this video on my feed later. I'm pretty sure I can do that, right? Record it, then post it, or so that'll be up there. So for any of you that watch this and got some value from it and want to make sure that other people get to learn about what it is that we shared, please reshare it. Tag your friends, put it out there, and let's together put an end to this horrific act of humanity. So yeah.
Thank you, Zark.
Thank you. And I look forward to seeing many of you on Saturday at the march. Please come say hi. And yeah.
Get your t-shirt, first 30 people.
Yeah, come see me. Exactly. Come see me, get a t-shirt, and look forward to meeting all of you then. So bye for now. Thank you, Shay, and I'll see you all later.
Awesome.
Yeah.